Alright, so the dud has been primered in gray, and we also pre-shadowed all the panel lines and the flaps and the crease, the what do you call it? The flaps in flat black, pre-shadowed. So it's ready for its chrome silver paint. Alright, my setting on my airbrush was too high, so I lost all my pre-shadowing because I laid the silver chrome too thick. But it worked on the fuel tanks, because by the time I got to the small parts, I dialed it down and it came out the way it should have. But it's too late. The body, all the pre-shadowing got covered, so that means I'm going to have to do it the old-fashioned way with the craft paint afterwards. Alright, so on this one I had to actually mock up the door flaps with decals on because they're in the inner half as opposed to the outer half of the wing. So once that's dry, I'm going to leave the door flaps open. It's just easier to do it this way, to put the decals on first rather than worry about it later. Alright, so everything's assembled except for the canopy frame and the two pilots. It's time for decals. I left the canopy off because I'm gonna dull coat it when I'm done with the decals. So I didn't want the clear to be foggy. Now I'm just doing the panel line accents. Here we are at the final reveal. I'd like to thank Kurt for doing this buddy build with me. This is the second F-105 I've done with him. The first one was the single-seater D. This one is the twin-seater F version. I think this is... I very rarely build different variations of one type of airplane, but it was really fun. I think I had more fun on the second one than the first one. Now that I know Kurt, I know his building style, I got to know him better, and we text each other and communicate throughout the buddy build, which makes it fun. So I had a great time, Kurt. Thanks again. Hopefully we can build another plane in the future. So here is the F-105F Thud twin-seater. I like how I basically did the box art, which is the natural metal finish, and just for comparison, it's basically the same kit. Just with a longer fuselage. And of course, minor differences like in the placement of certain antennas or certain, but this one has a scoop, this one does not. But I liked how I built two of them with various exterior colors. So the Southeast Asian camo, same bomb load and everything. And this one, of course, is the natural bare metal finish. So let's take a look at it. I basically used the box stock decals, and I was pretty impressed with the decals. They held up pretty well. They transferred without ripping. The only problem I had was the edges of the decals. There were little fragments of the background water slide, so it was cut nice and square, but it took a little bit of the background, I guess due to age. So when I was laying down the background and I blotted it out with a Q-tip, some of the remnants of the water slide decals that jagged on the edges came off, and I was able to wipe off most of them, but then I forgot to give it a nice wash down before spraying the clear coat. So when I sprayed the clear coat, I got some of the fragments of the water slide. Also made a boo-boo over here. Of course, my hand had glue on it. I touched it there, but you could hardly tell. I have to learn how to dial back on the chrome silver after doing the pre-shadowing, because in the front you could tell you couldn't see the pre-shadow, but in the back it kind of shows up, which is nice. You see how I see the black lines? And of course on the fuel tank you see the lines as well. So the pre-shadow worked in the back half, but the front half I have to dial back. But for the most part it was easy to put together. Since I was familiar with the kit, the paint for this is chrome silver, and then you can't really tell because the differences are very subtle, but underneath this panel that says US Air Force, and this panel over here, of course the panels I choose are the ones covered by decals, and the panel over here that's covered by this decal, I masked it off and I sprayed it titanium silver. So slight variation, but you can't quite really tell, but from this angle I guess you can kind of tell that it was a slightly different shade. But for the most part, since some of the pre-shadow didn't show up in the front half, I just used panel line accent from Tamiya, and I just did all the indentations, or like the little vent holes and the hand holes and the foot holes. So I did that. Basically it's box stock except for these lines. These are not decals. They were supposed to be olive drab lines that resemble D-Day Normandy invasion stripes. And I didn't feel like masking it off, so I did not put any stripes on the wings or in the rear fuselage underneath this insignia. The red stripe they gave it to you as a decal, so I used it. But other than that, I did not put in those stripes. Also, the US Air Force, I put the decals slightly back. Like this US Air Force is supposed to be over this vent hole for the 20mm Gatling gun, but I don't want to have those vents covered because then I would have to pop the holes with a knife, so I just basically moved it backwards. Those are only changes. So let's take a look at the model more closely. I think the finish came out nice. I also finished it with, I decided against a dull coat, and I just finished it with X22 clear gloss coat. That's why it's so shiny. I just wish the pre-shadow had come out a little more than just in the back. But that's the way it turned out. So, also instead of using white helmets, flight helmet, I painted them in camo with the tan and green and the black stripe. I think some of them stationed in Thailand use that type of camo on the helmet instead of bright white. But the decals were a pleasure to use. If I only cleaned up those fragmented pieces of water slide, I would not have gotten these little, like, what look like little, I don't know what you call it, little pieces of fragment that got clear coated. But for the most part, pleasure. Also, in communicating with Kurt, I actually saw from one of his pictures when I was assembling the wings that I placed the wing spar in the wrong place. So thankfully I saw his pictures. I took the wings apart and I had to redo it. So this one, the wing spar is mounted incorrectly, but it worked for me. This one I corrected it. So that's another good thing about doing a buddy build. You learn from each other. But I'll come in close and show you guys. 2 cockpits, double the amount of detail you have to do. I did not use the Furball decals. I was thinking about using the Grim Reaper, but I just I just used the box stock ones that came with the kit. So those are the pilots. They'll always, even with the natural finish, you'll always have this portion and anything that might distract the pilot sprayed in anti-glare or flat paint so the sun doesn't reflect in his eyes. Give you a 360. I didn't really weather the panel lines that much. I was hoping for the pre-shadow to come out, but so I just left it as is, just a little bit. Interesting how the pilots, one has a visor up, one has a visor down. So let me show you the bottom. I'll have to hold it because the canopy pieces are up. I highlighted the lines. So one thing about the landing gear, and I agree with Kurt when we were building the D version, is it's not quite secure. It kind of sways a bit, and the reason why it sways is because there's basically only one main strut holding the main landing gear. For the most part, most landing gears are like a tripod setup where they have 3 struts basically, one main strut and 2 braces. But this one only has 1 brace, and the brace is bent at a 90-degree elbow. So not only is it just 2 instead of 3, but then the one brace is bent like an elbow. So it's kind of moves. So that's the only part that's kind of unsure. This is strange too because the stars and bars are not on the edge, I guess because of the payload it would cover it. So it was on the landing gear door, so I had to put that on before assembling the landing gear down. Painted these parts red per instructions, but basically same kit, same parts. Maybe a different hood scoop, different scoop, or a few minor differences, but for the most part, same kit. So as usual, I will have stills at the end, and thank you to all you viewers and subscribers that tuned in. And it's just interesting how I built 2 versions with 2 different finishes, which is pretty good, so you get to see all the potential of the 2 different exterior painting. Okay, thanks Kurt, had fun, thank you for the buddy build, look forward to our future collaboration. Thanks.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end. My